So today I thought I would be going through these AWS SNS Accelerator FAQs. This is really important when it comes to you are preparing for an exam because it has all the type of uh, latest questions that you need to know. So let's start with what is accelerator. AWS Global Accelerator is a networking service that helps you improve the availability and performance of the application that you offer to your global users. So, if you're having a global application, it's the go-to service. AWS Global Accelerator is easy to set up, configure, and manage. It provides a static IP address range addresses that provide a fixed entry point to your application and eliminate the complexity of managing specific IP address for different AWS regions and availability zones. AWS Global Accelerator always routes user traffic to the optimal endpoint based on performance, reacting instantly to changes in application health, your app uses location and policy that you configure. You can test the performance benefits from your location with a speed comparison tool like other AWS services. AWS Global Accelerator is a self-service pay-per-use offering, require no long-term commitments or minimum fees that you don't. Basically, when you mean by commitment is that you are going to say, "Hey, I'm coming to the trip. Are you coming to the trip?" Yes, I am. That means commitment. That means, are you going to use the accelerator for 2 months? Yes, that means the commitment. But for a global accelerator, you don't have to have that commitment. Okay, that's great. Let's move to the next question. What can I do with AWS Accelerator? By using AWS Global Accelerator, you can associate the static IP addresses provided by the global accelerator to regional AWS resources or endpoints such as network load balancers, application load balancers, EC2 instance, and elastic IP addresses. The IP addresses are any cast from AWS location, so they provide onboarding to the AWS global network close to your users. Easily move endpoints between availability zones or AWS regions without needing to update DNS configuration or change client facing applications. Dial traffic up and down for a specific AWS region by configuring the traffic dial percentage for your endpoint groups. This is especially useful for testing performance and releasing updates. Control the proportion of traffic directed to each endpoint within an endpoint group by assigning weights across the endpoints. So this is basically how you use it. What performance improvement does AWS Global Accelerator provide? AWS Accelerator utilizes the global network, allowing you to improve performance of your application by lowering first byte latency, which means the first one, the round trip time for a packet to go from a client to endpoint and back again, and jitter, the variation of latency, and increasing throughput, the amount of data transferred in a second, as compared to the public internet. For TCP traffic, as measured by third-party real user measurement tools at the 90th percentile (P90), Global Accelerator decreases first byte latency up to 49% and jitter by 58% and improves throughput by 60%. Lever, a recruiting firm, found that simply by enabling AWS Global Accelerator, one multinational customer saw 51.2% reduction in mean end-to-end app load times. By building a multi-region architecture fronted by Global Accelerator, Skyscanner was able to decrease response time from more than 200 milliseconds to less than 4 milliseconds, a 98% improvement. Try speed comparison tool to get a preview of the performance benefit from your location. How do I get started with AWS Accelerator? That's great. That's simple. You can get started by setting up the AWS Global Accelerator by using the API through the AWS Management Console or by using AWS CloudFormation template. Because AWS Global Accelerator is a global service, it's not tied to any specific region. Here are 3 easy steps to set up AWS Global Accelerator for your application. Create an accelerator. When you create an accelerator, AWS Global Accelerator provisions 2 static IP addresses for it. Then you configure one or more listeners to process inbound connections from end clients to your accelerators based on the protocol and port that you specify. Configure endpoint groups. You choose one or more regional endpoint groups to associate to your accelerators listener by specifying the AWS regions to which you want to distribute traffic. Your listener routes request to the registered endpoints in this endpoint group. AWS Global Accelerator monitors the health of endpoints within the group using the health checks setting defined for each endpoint. You can configure a traffic dial percentage for each endpoint, which controls the amount of traffic that an endpoint group accesses by default. The traffic dial is set to 100% for all regional endpoint groups. Register endpoints for endpoint groups. You register one or more regional resources such as application load balancer, network load balancer, EC2 instance, or elastic IP address in each endpoint group. Then you can set weights to choose how much traffic is routed to each endpoint. Okay, I think we'll continue in the next